Dr. John Taylor Kent here. Welcome to Awakening Israel. We're going to get right into Jeremiah chapter 3. This is one of the places in the Bible where the sin that Israel committed that caused them to be taken into captivity is prophesied, is warned about. There's another place in the Bible, I don't know where it is exactly. It's in one of the other major prophets. So that's your job to go find that. I'm just going to focus on this one chapter of the Bible as best I can and try to flesh out everything I can for you that I think is important. And of course, I'm not going to be able to touch everything because I'm just a man, just one man. Can't do all that. So today is the 11th of August. It's early in the morning. Jeremiah chapter 3. They say, if a man puts away his wife and she goes from him and becomes another man's, shall he return to her again? Shall not that land be greatly polluted? In the other part of the Bible, the other prophet says, and the land shall spew you out. So this is the great sin that preceded going into captivity. And I bring this to your attention because this is what we're doing today in America. This is the sin that we're committing today. We need to stop doing these things. So basically, if a man puts his wife away, means if a man divorces his wife, okay, you divorce her, you give her a certificate of divorce. You legally divorce her, you put her out. And then she becomes another man's wife, possession. Shall he return to her again? Shall he go into her again? We might as well get down to the nuts and bolts and the nitty-gritty of this. Shall not the land be greatly polluted? So in other words, the violation is you divorce her, you can't take her back again. The law is, if you divorce her, you cannot take her back again. But we have couples doing that all over the place. Now, what is marriage? You got to know what marriage is, right? That's what's going on here. If a man puts away his wife, so what is a wife? What is marriage? Well, if we read the Bible proper, these books that we have here, the 66 books that constitute most of the Bible, we will not see a marriage license mentioned in the entire thing. So in other words, that wasn't the definition of marriage. Marriage wasn't you got a license, you paid the state, got permission from the state to do it. Marriages were unions made by Yahweh before God. And if we read the Bible carefully, and I'm not going to get into reading it carefully right now, but if we read it carefully, we find out that the Sex Act is the Marriage Act. And quite often, you had a mother preparing her tent for her son and his new bride, new wife. And so the Marriage Act was the Sex Act. And a lot of you are going to say, no, that can't be it because we don't want to be married that easily that way. But that is what I get from my reading of the Bible. So now that I've told you that, let me contradict myself. There is a place in the Bible that talks about a contract for marriage, and that's in the book of Tobit, I believe. And they drew up a marriage contract in it. It doesn't say license. A license is a permission slip to do something that's against the law. But it does say they had a marital contract. And if you read that story, it's got some twist to it and some odd things. This woman apparently has been associated with the deaths of many men before Tobit. And so he had to have the help of an angel in overcoming the demon that was around this woman who became his wife so that he wouldn't die. All the other husbands that she took, they all died. It's in the apocryphal books, the 14 books that were in the original King James Bible, and in my opinion, should be in the Bible. However, the sources for those books are somewhat difficult to nail down. There are different translations, different versions based upon completely, well, not quite completely, but at least one of the books to Esdras. The text is completely different between the New Revised Standard Version and the original King James. So, what are we doing in our nation today? We're divorcing like crazy, and we're getting back together again. So exes get back together with exes all the time. It's almost like a fact. I don't know why, but we go back and we do this same thing again when we have divorced her. And this is polluting our land. So this is the state of America today. This is what, I don't know if I want to blame it on the wicked ones, but this is what they have gotten us to do. They've gotten us to divorce and to go back. And you just can't do that. Now, in other religions, it's basically said that, well, the old yogic religions and the Sikhs basically said that when a woman went off with another man, that she returned and brought that charge, if you will, that variation in her aura and the electromagnetic field surrounding her body. She impressed that upon her husband, and they said it drove him. It was a shock from which he would never recover. So it would kind of make him mad, drive him insane. So I'm going to go through a little bit more, and that's just verse 1. Right away we find out what it is, and I think that's the most important verse here. However, there's a couple more things just to flesh out this whole chapter. You have polluted the land with your whoredoms and with your wickedness. So in other words, doing this is not proper behavior. And I also underline the third verse. You had a whore's forehead. You refused to be ashamed. And that reminds me of the brazen look of a prostitute, which is described in the old King James Version. And that phrase is repeated quite often. So basically, there's a lack of, they aren't ashamed, they aren't shy, they aren't embarrassed at all. Now, verse 7, and her treacherous sister Judah saw it. So in other words, this is the house of Israel. Okay, and then the house of Judah did the same doggone thing. All right, but this verse 8 is very, very particular here. And I saw when all the causes whereby backsliding Israel committed adultery, I had put her away and given her a bill of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Judah feared it not, but went and played the harlot also. What I'd like to point out in particular is that Yahweh says he gave a bill of divorcement in other versions. I think the old King James says divorcement. He divorced her. He actually gave her a written document on that divorce, put her out. The important thing to recognize here is that Judah was not given a bill of divorcement. It was the house of Israel, the northern 10 tribes, that were taken into captivity by the Assyrians first. And they never returned home to the promised land. They broke into Europe and into the rest of the world. So Europeans are descendants of the Israelites, primarily from the 10 northern tribes, via the Assyrian captivity. So the tribe of Judah, on the other hand, had the temple. They didn't create 2 golden calves like they did at Dan and Shiloh, or wherever they were up in the north, but they didn't create golden calves. They kept the temple and they kept the worship going, and the king line was intact. The kings of Israel sometimes they weren't descendants of the kings. They weren't inherited, whereas the kingship of Judah was the line of David, and it was preserved. So There was a twist or two in there when others were appointed, but basically, Judah didn't commit the sins that Israel committed. And Judah consists of the two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, primarily, and that's who returned after the captivity in Babylon. However, some other tribes are preserved down there too. The Levites, for one, all left the northern kingdom and went to Judah, to the house of Judah when things went bad, when they went into captivity in Assyria. They probably did that back at the time the golden calves were created as well. Some of them probably left the northern part. So, verse 9 I have underlined. Through the lightness of her whoredom, that she defiled the land and committed adultery with stones and with trees. So, in other words, had sex with about everything and anyone. It's pretty important. And the land was defiled, okay? And the land did spew them out. They were taken into captivity. And in the United States of America, I think we're already in captivity. We've been pulled out in terms of our jurisdictions and our citizenship. We used to be citizens of our states until the Civil War. Then, with the creation of the 14th Amendment, they created a citizen of the United States of America citizen. They also superimposed a new jurisdiction on us. So we have a modern captivity. We are pulled out from our original constitutional jurisdiction, and we're now ruled by a uniform commercial code and a bunch of these weird policies and things that we shouldn't have to live under. Far less freedom, far more taxes than ever before. Verse 13, only acknowledge your iniquity. So this is what Yahweh's asking. Hey, tell me what you did wrong. Acknowledge you're wrong. It's like, if somebody's done something wrong, it's nice to forgive them, but only after they've acknowledged they've done something wrong to you so that they won't do it again, or at least will try to avoid it. Scattered your ways to the strangers under every green tree, and have not obeyed my voice, says Yahweh. Turn, O backsliding children, says Yahweh, for I am married to you, and I will take you one of a city and two of a family, and I will bring you to Zion. This is a good concept, very forgiving. And I will give you pastors according to my heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding. So we do need to study the Old Testament. We need to learn these principles. Now, there's another thing that comes up in Jeremiah chapter 3, which I think is very, very important. And this is also mentioned in Isaiah. Don't have time to go look that up, but I didn't prepare for this very well. And I want to keep this as short as I can. Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 18. In those days the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel, and shall come together out of the land of the north, to the land that I have given for an inheritance unto your fathers. This has not happened yet. So this means basically the house of Judah, those of the southern two tribes, would be reunited, walking together with the house of Israel, the northern 10 tribes. That reunification has not occurred, in my opinion. Now, a lot of people are going to tell you that all of this stuff in the Old Testament's already been fulfilled. All of these prophecies have been fulfilled. And a lot of people will say all the prophecies in the entire Bible. Many people will say those have all been fulfilled. I disagree with that. I believe the Bible was written in the present tense, and sometimes it refers to the past, and quite often to the future. But sometimes it refers to a couple of different futures, not just one. So there are many layers and levels to the Bible. So I believe that there's going to be a time in which we are reunited and we march back to the promised land. And in the other prophet, I believe it says we will march arm in arm. And there are not going to be that many from the house of Judah. There's going to be more Israelites, which makes sense because the house of Israel is 10 tribes compared to the house of Judah, 2 tribes. And the house of Israel has multiplied tremendously. The United States of America is the great nation prophesied by Israel himself on his deathbed, basically. We are, in my opinion, Manasseh, and Ephraim became Great Britain, an empire of nations. Was Great Britain. Now, some will disagree with me, and maybe I have it flipped. Maybe it's the other way around. But it's okay. Someday we'll figure that out. We do know that we're awfully close because we're both descendants of Joseph, who adopted Israel, adopted those two boys as his children, which gave us 13 tribes. Very important to know that. And sometimes Ephraim and Manasseh are referred to as Joseph, the house of Joseph. And here's kind of the cure at this point. This is the prophecy. Verse 19, you shall call me my father, and shall not turn away from me. Okay, sounds good to me. Surely as a wife treacherously departs from her husband, so have you dealt treacherously with me. So many people are going to say that this is just an analogy, this divorcing a woman, putting her out, she becomes married to another man and comes back. I mean, I know a lot of women that say they're going to get back with their original husbands. I think even my brother's first wife made that kind of a threat, and that kind of intimation to her two daughters, who both knew better than that, and she's been married to another man, maybe two men since then. I don't know. I don't keep track of that stuff. But my brother most definitely said there was no way that he was going to take her back. And I think that's wisdom on his part, even though he hasn't read the Bible, and I can assure you he doesn't understand this principle. But he's got good common sense. And that's mostly what the laws in the Bible are. The guidelines of the Bible are good common sense. So a wife treacherously departs from her husband. So she goes off to have sex with another man, to cheat on her husband, brings that shock back to her husband. Not a fair deal. Okay, basically, I underline chapter 21, verse 21. For they have perverted their way, and they have forgotten Yahweh their God. So basically, this is an appeal. Return, you backsliding children, and I will heal your backslidings. That's where we are today. We really need to correct ourselves. We need to be corrected. I'll end with verse 25, the last verse of Jeremiah 3. We lie down in our shame, so what we do is shameful, and our confusion covers us. So we become disoriented as a result of that. For we have sinned against Yahweh our God, we and our fathers, which is true for us today in the United States of America, from our youth even to this day, and have not obeyed the voice of Yahweh our God. I do firmly believe that the way to heal America is to return to Yahweh, to become Bible readers, and to remind ourselves that we agreed to certain terms and conditions, and one of those was to abide by the Ten Commandments. I don't see anything wrong with abiding by the Ten Commandments. They say they say you can't post the Ten Commandments on a courthouse wall because it turns the courthouse into a hostile environment, because we don't want to abide by the Ten Commandments. The attorneys certainly don't want to abide by the Ten Commandments. So Jeremiah chapter 3 tells us two important things. One was the sin that Israel committed, and eventually Judah committed, that got them pulled out of the land, taken into captivity. It also is the sin that we have committed in our nation, slowly over time, over more than 200 years, over many decades. And we have adopted these evil ways, and it has led us into confusion. Okay? and it's also led us into captivity. And today we no longer have a republic. The republic was destroyed. We can point to several points, several dates, several events in our history that under which we have given up our republic. I think the most important one was the adoption of the 17th Amendment, which called for the direct election of senators. Why would that have destroyed the republic? Well, the signers to the constitutions were the states. The state governments were represented. So we can rightfully say the signers of the Constitution were senators. They signed representing the states. Today, the state governments have no representation. And the reason the Senate was considered slow to change, and a protector of the republic, protector of the Constitution, was because there were just 100 members, and they had to vote the way the state governments wanted them to vote. They couldn't be a maverick and vote the way they wanted to without the risk of being recalled, of being fired, of being recalled to the seat from which they were elected from the other state legislators. And we need to go back to that so that these senators are beholden to the state governments and they become protectors again. So the Senate will become slow again to change and slow to make errors. I think we need to go a step further with that. I think we need to tell the states, not only are they coming from your state legislators, you're going to pay them. I think each state senator should have a paycheck signed by their governor of their state so they know who they're beholden to. I think the states should be obligated to dictate the pay and benefits that they deem pertinent, that they want for their senators. And they could probably withdraw those benefits and pay if they didn't like their senator, just as a way to try to correct them momentarily. We really do need to return to the original structure. The 17th Amendment is not constitutional. It's not constitutional, and that to me was the final nail in the coffin that destroyed the republic. And in order to reclaim the republic, we must get rid of that errant 17th Amendment. I also would like to return to a Congress that is constitutional. Congress was never intended to be paid. They were only given a per diem, and that is money to defray the expenses of lodging and room and board, basically, while in service. They weren't paid any benefits. They were given the franking privilege later. I don't mind if they keep that, but they should get no pay and benefits. A congressman, congresswoman volunteers, gives of their own time. There's no need for term limits, because when they can no longer afford to support themselves, they leave office, go home, and go back to the job at which they were successful at, earning a living and supporting themselves, so they won't become parasites upon the public. I would like to see, by the way, basically what happened is the Congress and the Senate made a deal. Congress wanted to get paid. Senators wanted to be directly elected so they could hold office in perpetuity and become professional politicians. I'd like to see a return of the statesman or stateswoman, whatever have you. We need to return to the original structure. We've gotten way out of shape. We need to return to constitutional currency, constitutional money. If we read this Bible, it's my copy, the proper name version of the King James Bible. If we read the Bible carefully, it tells us what money is. Study the Bible for money. We realize that it is a tangible material. It is gold or silver in the Bible. That is money. It has a weight. There is a measure of it, and it has a purity. This is what we need to return to. The Bible dictates what money is, and our Constitution does too. Constitution says shall be gold coined silver. I think coined silver is adequate for our daily uses so we can take care of daily transactions. So if you have divorced your wife, you're not allowed to take her back. That's what the Bible says. That's what the prophets warn the Israelites. It's not in the Ten Commandments, but it is in the Bible. You got to read it to get to understand it. So do me a favor, support my channel, like my video, share my video, get this out there, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to do my best to stick to reading the Bible and explaining to you the important factors that I've discovered. Oh, and feel free to give me comments. A word of encouragement would be good. If I've made an error, then correct me. If I've offended, well, I'd like to be able to say so be it. But if you really have a basis, go ahead and put it down there. I will take correction if it's merited. You know, I'll embrace it. I'll correct myself. I might be an old man, but I'm not too old to learn new tricks. I'm not too old to change. I read this thing almost daily. It is what helped me in my recovery from 2 strokes in the year 2006. It's what keeps me sane, keeps my head on straight. I enjoy it quite a bit. I'm praying and hoping for a new rig that has got a couple of large picture windows so I can have a chair next to it for good natural reading light. That's basically what I want to do, is be able to go off into the wilderness and isolate, read my Bible, occasionally visit brothers and sisters and talk about what's in here. There's nothing I enjoy more than talking about the truth that's in the Bible. Yahweh certainly blessed me. By reading my Bible, I was actually able to restore my short-term working memory to the point where I'm pretty doggone functional. It sure beats burning pots and pans or leaving the bath water on or any of that other stuff that was going on shortly after I stroked. It's wonderful to remember several numbers in a row instead of not even being able to hold one digit in my short-term working memory. Yahweh humbled me, and I accepted the humbling. He had to hit me twice. The second time was a massive headache. The first time was really enough, but the second time that was induced by an errant woman who decided to interfere in my marriage on behalf of women because of her lesbian tendencies. And so she stepped in and put an order of protection against me that wasn't necessary. And I had a massive headache when it was presented because I had to present that to my supervisors at the Arizona Department of Corrections. And I didn't like that. My job was on the line. It was actually gone shortly after that. When you do the right thing in the wrong place, you get creamed. As we can see is what's going on in this country today. We had a man that was serving the country quite well, and he got creamed, and they're still after him. Read the Bible. I don't think that you should worship or make another golden calf. I don't think you should try to turn a politician into a savior. Not at all. I think you need to save yourselves by reading the Bible, learning what Yahweh's will is, begging him to show you the best choice for the moment that you are alive in, because you'll get the rewards that way. Yahweh bless.